Hi guys, welcome. So this is our Feminist Fireside Chat series, the UMKC Women's Center, and today we're joined by me, Courtney Smith, Chelsea, um, our coordinator, and then we also have student staff. We have Layla, Brooklyn, and Allison, and then our wonderful UMKC students are here. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that our center sits on the traditional, ancestral, and current home of Native Americans, Indigenous, and First Nations people. I ask you to join me in acknowledging the many tribal groups from our area, including the Osage, Kaw, Kickapoo, and Sioux tribes. We honor the elders, both past and the present, and this calls us to commit to continuing to learn their stories, as well as how to be better stewards of the lands that we occupy. Now, I would like to introduce our guest speakers. So right here we have Dr. Allison Edwards. Dr. Allison Edwards is a board-certified family physician who aims to change the manner in which healthcare is delivered, putting the emphasis on keeping people well rather than solely stepping in and treating the sick. We also have Dr. Sally Ellis Fletcher on our team. She has taught or served in clinical capacity in private, public, urban, and rural organizations. Her practice areas include nursing, education, diversity, equity, inclusion, multiculturalism, entrepreneurship in nursing, mentoring, and humanitarianism. And then we also have nurse practitioner Kelly Freeland. She has been an RN for 20 years and a board-certified family nurse practitioner for 30 years. Kelly has worked in several rural area family practice clinics. Several rural family practice clinics caring for patients from newborns to over 100 years of age, but her passion is working with young adults in the university setting. So we'll start with Dr. Allison Edwards. If you would like to introduce yourself, I know we did a brief little one.
Yes. I don't know if there's anything more to that to me than that one sentence. Oh, thank you. I'm a family physician. I went to KU for med school. I went to Drake University for undergrad. My family's in this area. I'm very in love with Kansas City. I love the area. I've had a very interesting journey when it comes to sort of a non-traditional healthcare career journey, I should say, where after residency, I actually opened up my own clinic, and instead of billing insurance for services, which I think we're all kind of accustomed to in the healthcare space, I got rid of insurance and we did a flat monthly fee. It's called direct primary care. And the reason I did that was because I felt passionately about serving the underserved, making sure that we could create access for all to receive healthcare. And in my training and whatnot, I discovered how limiting insurance can be to accessing care. And so my goal was to create a lower price point that was essentially a monthly fee that people could afford. And so we ended up starting at like a little bit above $50 a month on average, kind of depending on your age. And it kind of scooted up eventually. They were at $60 per month. But we saw everybody from those who were paycheck to paycheck to people who were, C-suite, high-level executives. And what I loved about what we did was that we were able to treat everybody exactly the same. Nobody got better or worse care. It was like we provided a very high-quality product for every single person. And so that's sort of the entrepreneurial side of me, was like, how can we solve some problems out there? And then I got to foray into a lot of different things because I had my own clinic. I was like, when COVID happened, I was running my own small business, and we were all looking at the world shutting down. And I was like, well, how am I going to stay active and support the community? And so, within a few weeks, once testing happened, we launched testing initiatives within underserved areas in the Kansas City metro with Heart to Heart International, and was able to throw my weight behind that, and so on and so forth. So there's been a lot of position of being able to position in an entrepreneur, been able to quickly just say, like, what is the need now and how can I do it? And there's about money and revenue and all of that. Like, we'll figure it out. And ultimately, I'm in my own boss, and so I get to make those decisions. So it's a pretty cool world to be in. And so I've done a lot of other stuff too, but those are kind of like the high level I'm most proud of. I ended up selling my clinic. I now have 2 kids. That's a whole different story and a whole different job that we could talk about. But I've created more flexibility and less day-to-day responsibility by selling the clinic. And so I do work in emergency rooms, hospitals. I am a consultant for a tech firm that does healthcare. I'm the medical director for a hospice group. It sounds like a lot, but they're all very small jobs that I've kind of pieced together, giving those flexibility, and so I can be present with my kids. So that's what I do now. Sorry, it was very long. I apologize. Very long intro.
I'm Kelly Freeland, and I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I've actually been an RN now for 40 years and an NP for over 30. I love what I do. I'm passionate about healthcare in general, but especially women's healthcare, young adults. I enjoy working in student health. I kind of like what you say because I've always gravitated towards places where people can come in no matter how much money they have or they don't have, and I can give them the same care as I give somebody that's got the best insurance plan. So I've worked a lot in rural public health clinics, federally qualified health clinics that see people with and without insurance. And I love working at UMKC Student Health because we do not bill insurance. So we do not have to charge a copay. We have discounted lab fees and things like that. So I just feel healthcare is a right for every human on earth. And women utilize healthcare more than anybody. So yeah, I know you're going to ask further questions about other things later on, so I won't go too far off. But I'm a woman. I use she/her pronouns. And I'm married. I've been married to Arthur for almost 40 years now, and we have 3 adult children too. So outside of my nurse practitioner hat, that's what I do. And I love hiking and reading and just traveling. So
Dr. Sally Ellis, sorry, Dr. Sally Ellis Fletcher, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm not able to be there with you, but I have transitioning between the campuses doesn't allow me to make my next appointment. I currently serve as the Associate Dean for Students in the School of Nursing and Health Studies. I've been a nurse for well over 40 years, and it's been a career path that has afforded me so many opportunities. It just aligned with me and my flexibility. We'd be here all day if I told you all the different things that it's opened up for me to do. Women's healthcare is where I started, and it continues to be my passion in a variety of areas. So I'll stop at that point. Got a wonderful echo going on. I have to turn everything off or...
Let me see.
Okay, I'll stop and
I have echo cancellation.
Or echo cancellation?
Yeah, those are their own. Stereo. No.
Just want to do that feedback. You hit the feedback screen.
But we couldn't hear her on that one.
Are you all not hearing me?
No, we
We hear you now.
I'm just trying to adjust the sound so that you don't get that echo on your end.
Is that better?
Do you hear an echo when you speak?
Maybe not. Is that better?
Are you asking me? Or
Yeah.
I've heard you completely. I just didn't know.
Do you hear the echo now?
No, I do not hear it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Well, Dr. Sally Ellis Fletcher, would you like to start telling us a little bit about your educational background?
I heard a question in my name, but I'm sorry I didn't hear the question.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about your educational background?
Sure. I went to Avila University. Back then it was called Avila College, and earned my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. Then came to the University of Missouri and earned a master's degree in women's healthcare, and then came back and earned a certificate in women's healthcare as a nurse practitioner. Then ended up going to the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York, and earned a doctorate of philosophy and health science research with an emphasis on entrepreneurship and nursing.
And what drew you into women's healthcare initially?
Oh gosh. That's a loaded question, and I've thought a lot about it. I back then when I went into women's healthcare, I felt women, and not to say that men don't have power, but I think women have the power to change a nation because they rock the cradle. They carry the cradle. They carry the next generation. And I felt that if women at the time when they come for their birth, when they come for their postpartum care, prenatal care, pap smears, which were more regular back then, we had a chance as healthcare providers to make a difference and to give them the knowledge to care for themselves and to care for their families. So it was kind of a philosophical belief, and I still believe that today, that women are powerful. And I also did not like how the healthcare system treated women, and I wanted to make a difference in that.
Awesome, thank you. Dr. Alton Edwards, do you mind answering the same questions? Tell us a little about your education.
Totally. And I already kind of said it. Undergrad at Drake University. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Undergrad at Drake University, med school at KU. I did a residency 3 years for family medicine at the University of Colorado in Denver, and then came back here to Kansas City. I was drawn to women's healthcare for far less noble reasons. I just think it's cool. It just resonates with me. Like, women are cool. I like to take care of them because women do cool stuff.
So I don't do anything the easy way. So my undergrad, I did biology and psychology, and I did that at Missouri State. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I thought teaching or medical somehow. And then I graduated in like 1981. And when I came out, I taught for a while science in high school, and I just wasn't getting a lot of reward from that. And there was a shortage of nurses at that time, and a lot of nursing schools were advertising. They didn't have the fast track programs back then like they do now when you already have a degree, but William Jewell College was really good about kind of carving something out for me, because I'd already had like 140 undergrad hours. So I was able to do that in a year and a half to get the nursing clinical classes, which I also worked at Children's Mercy as a nurse tech during that time, which that was invaluable experience there. So then I graduated from there. We moved to Oregon. I married my husband shortly after that. We moved to Oregon. And while in Oregon, I'd been there for about 5 years or so, I got a master's in community healthcare systems and a master's of nursing. And then after that, I did a post master's certificate program to get my family nurse practitioner through Oregon Health Sciences in Portland, Oregon, which was another wonderful experience to be up there too. As far as women's healthcare go, I appreciate everything Sally said, because I've always felt that. And we know just from research that women are the ones that pick healthcare providers for their family. We know that they're the ones that make a lot of those decisions. They're the caretakers, right? So that always was kind of a neat thing. And I felt like, yeah, and women tend to utilize healthcare more than men. And I agree too with what Sally said about, I was always frustrated at how little research there was into women's health, those types of things. But my first year after my family nurse practitioner program, I had the privilege of working at a Planned Parenthood clinic. I just thought, well, that's a good way to get better at women's healthcare, because I know I'm going to probably move to rural areas and I really want to have good skills in women's healthcare. And it was wonderful. And that year I learned so much about women's healthcare. And once again, it's one of those places where you serve everybody, no matter what their income level. And that kind of sealed the deal. But then I knew we'd be in smaller communities. But no matter where you go, even in smaller communities, if you're a women are drawn to you. They want to see you for their health care usually. So, yeah.
Now back to Allison. Do you think that your identity as a woman impacts your approach to healthcare? And if it does, how so?
Did you write the questions? Is that who?
We collaborated.
Hard
Yeah.
questions. Like,
I was
I had one of my, above my desk. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. I was like, God, I don't even know. And perhaps that's my answer.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that who we are in our identities, and you guys, by the way, I think are probably far more knowledgeable on gender studies and like feminism, because I am a big old buffoon when it comes to this. Like, I didn't even understand that I was interested in feminism probably until like my early 30s. So like it was like not even on my radar. Again, which is why I'm like I like women's healthcare, but the perspective now I think echoes what you guys have both said, in that it is exceptionally important to take exceptionally good care of women. And not to say that taking good care of men is not important, but women are so much the fabric of their households, of their communities. And frankly, women, even though they do end up consuming more healthcare, are often also they're the deciders for healthcare for everybody in their family. And so you have to think about it in that whole perspective of when you're treating a child, when you're treating the parental unit, whomever that is made up of. And so it just frames, it gives you a contextual framework for like when you're providing healthcare to know like how much you're supporting not just the woman in front of you, but everyone around her, whether that's fair or not, right? Because there's also that going through my head of like supporting, like, why are you carrying the load? Like, who's supporting you? But that has to go into like what plays into like that holistic picture of health is like your physical health, your mental health, your community health, and whatnot. So having sort of that deep understanding of what it means to sort of be that in a system, I think is very helpful in understanding perspective as it comes to health.
Yeah, obviously kind of a lot of, I'll say same thing that Allison said a little bit, but yeah, just being a woman going through all the things we go through from, especially I think once you hit puberty, that's when most women are kind of like, oh, my body's doing some different weird things. And I think just having that experience, I always felt, you can relate to younger women. And then the older I got, not that I feel like when you're a younger practitioner, you can't relate to older people, but once you go through all those stages, it sure does make it easier to relate. So I just feel that women taking care of women is probably beneficial in the long run, just because we have an understanding of what women go through. Is that the whole part of that question?
No, that's
I hope I
perfect.
answered it.
Do you want us all to answer every question? I'm sorry. I was like, I passed you. Okay,
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll lead you guys. I
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sally Ellis Fletcher, how about you? Does your identity as a woman impact your approach to healthcare? And if it does, how so?
The short answer, yes. And it's not only for me, the personal identity of who I am, but the women, the mother, the grandmothers, and the great grandmothers, and all the cultural aunties, now called aunties, that I was raised around and that impact how I provide health care.
Mhm.
And because as a woman, I've also been discriminated against. I can remember with the birth of my first child in 1976, when I was being wheeled into the birthing room because I had gone through my OB class. I knew that they used leather straps to strap down a woman's hands when she birthed a baby, leather straps that you would use like in a mental hospital. And that petrified me. I'm a control freak. I will admit it. I'm a control freak. And I remember pleading as they were rolling me from the laboring area to the delivery room area, pleading with the nurse, do not strap my hands, do not strap my hands, do not strap my hands. And even as they transferred me onto the delivery table, pleading with her again because she never answered. And then finally she said, okay, honey, you be a good girl. And she's patting me on my shoulder. You be a good girl, honey, and keep your hands the sterile cloth and hold on to this metal piece and don't let the doctor see your hands. Okay. Just be a good girl. Well, blankety blank, 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 blank. Okay. That's not nice. That's not right. And so those kinds of things, even before I became a licensed registered nurse, but knowing that, and then discrimination as an African-American woman and seeing what happens to all women, period, and women of color especially, impacts everything I do every day. Though I'm not in direct patient care, it impacts everything I do for all people.
You know, I think it's so funny that that the birth field is like sterile. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think it's so funny because like the vagina is like a
So-
beautiful garden of bacteria. So like you go to deliver, and these OBs are literally wearing sterile garb and have sterile sheets. And I'm like, also, I'm sorry for the tangent,
No.
but this is what made me think of this. Was that in training I got to see, I got to help like in kind of I was not very much help probably, but I got to be part of a water birth, and then the next birth was with an OB in sterile garb, and I was like, there was literally poop floating in the water.
Yeah.
And then this other one, you're like sterile. I was like, this is dumb. It
And
was
there's
this.
poop floating inside
Yes,
the
there's
womb.
poop. And yeah, the baby poop,
So-
there's poop everywhere.
So
No, I cannot believe it. Like, to just.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway.
and if I don't know, yeah, that's okay.
Did you want to talk about poop?
I don't know. I
It's
don't
always welcome.
The only thing I can say to that is, sadly, when I went into direct nursing care practice in 1977, maternal morbidity and childhood morbidity and mortality rates were high. During my practice, they came down, and not that I had that much to do over, but that time frame, they came down, and cesarean rates came down. It is a 101% crime that today in America, morbidity and mortality rates for all women, and especially women of color with African American and Hispanics right behind, those rates are climbing up higher, and the C-section rates are higher. And it doesn't matter your economic background, it doesn't matter your educational background. It is a shame, and we have to unite. Men, women, trans, however we identify, we need to bond together and put a stop to that, because that's the future that we're losing. And I'll stop my soapbox there.
So,
you're right, you're right.
And I was just gonna say, if any of you like to stream things, call the midwife. I don't know if you've ever
Mhm.
watched that, but that's kind of a good lesson on the evolution of some women's health and OB care and how they delivered these women at home very safely, and they took really good care of them because they listened to them, they saw them in their home environment. And now I'm at the part where they're trying to bring this was in the late 50s and 60s, and now towards the mid 60s they're trying to bring everybody into the sterile hospital environment because it's so much better for the mother. But as Sally said, that's not necessarily true, and it is appalling, this C-section rate, and the mortality goes up dramatically compared to the C-section rate too. So
Thank you, guys.
sorry. Yeah,
No.
I
I know me too. Yeah.
Well then, moving forward, Sally Ellis Fletcher, what do you think the best professional advice and personal advice that you have ever received is?
Related to women's health care or just in general?
More, it could be in general, it could be towards your profession, it could be towards women's healthcare.
When I had the opportunity to move to Rochester, New York, by myself, and I did not know anyone there, and leave my entire family and support system in the greater Kansas City area, my brother said to me, "Baby, you got to decide, if you're always going to wonder what if, then you got to go. If you know that you're okay saying no and you don't go, then don't go." And I have used that same advice with students, with clients, that if you wonder what if, you got to at least take the risk. Take the risk. You can always return and start something new. So I think that one's right up there. sadly, late in life, the best advice that I have taken, and there's a difference between what's been given to me and what I've taken, but that is fear less. Fear less.
That was beautifully said. Thank you so much. Chills. Allison, how about you?
It's a little bit cliche, but oh, thank you. I think the best advice is that I've been given, perhaps it relates personally, but professionally, is fake it till you make it. And I realize it may not be reassuring coming from a doctor, but hear me out for a second. I've never done this. No, but rather to employ it more in the sense of, I think that we can fall into a trap of questioning. It's sort of like an imposter syndrome, if you will, of like questioning, like, should I be here? Do I know what I'm doing? Am I the right person for this? Kind of taking advantage of opportunities, like, oh, is this the right opportunity for me, and all that stuff. It's like, go boldly forward, act as if you belong, own your space, be present, unapologetically there, and it works out really, really well. I saw somebody model this for me, and after the fact, I was like, wow, that was so impressive. Like, tell me more. Like, how did you learn all that? They're like, well, I just thought I could. And I was like, what? Well, that can be very dangerous. So, like, let's have guardrails. But at the same time, like, be present. I think that that's probably the best tip I've found that has taken me further than I think I would have gone by myself.
Great. So some of the best personal advice I've received was my father. I felt like he was pretty much a feminist, actually. He was raised by a single mom. She had 5 kids. And of course, he was born in 1930. So that was definitely before the time you think about those things. But he, one of the things he said to me, I mean, and not just his mom, but he had 3 sisters, and then he supervised the typing pool in the 50s and the 60s, and it was all women. And so he knew their struggles and their problems. And the thing that he said to myself and my sister was, whatever you do, I want you to have a career where you can support yourself. I don't want you to have to depend on any man. and coming from a man, that kind of says something. And he said, if you can have a good career where you can support yourself, everything else will fall into place. And I found that true, and living and working in rural areas, sometimes the intergenerational, and I know it's all over, it's not just rural areas, but we hear a lot about it in the cities, but you don't often hear about it from rural areas. But intergenerational poverty really holds people down, especially women and children. So the other thing, as far as professional advice, I would say that one of my professors in my nurse practitioner program, and she worked a lot with adults and older adults, but she just said, listen to your patients. You're going to get much more from the history and what they're trying to tell you than any physical exam, any lab test. You know, for the most part, you're going to learn a lot more if you listen to your patients. And I did work in peds for a few years, and that's really true with pediatrics too. I know that, because you have to listen to the moms, especially the moms, because women in general have an intuition, and moms especially of their children. So.
Well, Kelly, actually, back to you. Would you consider yourself a feminist in the work that you do?
I do, and over the years, I feel like I have been. I'll give an example. When I worked at Truman State University up in Kirksville, and I worked in student health for a while there also. And we had a very conservative board member at the university, and absolutely did not want us to have emergency contraception. He felt it was an abortive contraception, you know. And so I put on my big women pants, and I talked to him, and we were able to get that into the clinic there, which was great. I feel like over the years, kind of growing up in the 70s, I was a little young for that feminist wave, but I've always felt that. And then I, of course, had my dad who was very pro-woman and progressive about things like that. So I've just always, when somebody says, oh, you're a woman, what do you want to do that for? You can't do that. It just grinds on me. Yes, it's going to make me want to do more, go harder at it. The other thing that really bothers me, and we might be getting into it a little bit later, is the whole thing about I feel like we're going so far backwards after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I can tell you that in my reproductive life, pretty much abortion was safe and legal. My early teen years, it wasn't. And I knew some older friends that had abortions in places that weren't safe. I'm very passionate about that. My husband and I have been out collecting signatures for that several weekends and weeknights, trying to get that ballot on the Missouri, or trying to get an amendment on the ballot. So very much I feel like I'm a feminist and an activist and progressive as far as things like that go. I just feel like we need to have options for women. We need to keep the contraception we have, and we need to have safe and legal options for women, because if not, women will find a way, and it might not always have the best outcomes, unfortunately.
Sally Ellis, do you feel like do you consider yourself a feminist or activist in the work that you do?
Yes. I think it's an interesting label. I think you said earlier, someone on the panel said earlier that a man was a feminist. Your father was a feminist. And I think we get confused that the term can only be for women. It is believing about equity. It is believing about equal rights. It is believing about equal opportunities for all, and elevating everyone so that we have an equal playing field. So short answer, yes, I do. Am I an activist? I'm not the kind of activist who is getting signatures like you are out on the streets picketing. But boy, people tell you all the time that I am real mouthy and I'm always persuading people to try to do things. So I'm kind of behind the scene activist, and I try to get the biggest bang out of my buck where I'm at. I bloom where I'm planted.
How about you?
Oh, I don't know how to answer this question. I think that my 20-something-year-old self would hate the way I'm about to answer this, but I probably my works of activism are very quiet works of activism. By virtue of the fact that I'm a physician, and a lot of what I do is one-on-one with the person sitting in front of me. And so when I first opened the clinic, just through networking and again through different opportunities, the position opened up at Planned Parenthood to help with medication abortions on the Missouri side. This was a while ago, and it was still more available on the Missouri side. And I came home and I told my husband about the position opening, and without batting an eye, he was like, "Oh, absolutely, you should do that. Like, there's no question. Like that, it's in line with your beliefs. It's what you want to do. It's what you want to provide to women. It's safe and effective. It's healthcare. It's safe and effective care of women." I then have an incredible family. My mom's mother was one of 6, and they all had many, many children. And like all the cousins, I don't even know how I'm related to them actually, but we call ourselves the Frenchies because one time we went to Paris together, which is a whole different story. But anyway, a bunch of us women, we come from Central Kansas. We were out on the farm, dozen of us sitting around talking, and I shared this opportunity again with my very supportive female family, and they all, without hesitation, were like, "Why would you ever take that job?" And it was fascinating to me because I was taken aback because we're very progressive, and like we call ourselves the Frenchies because we're a girl gang. And their first thought was, they're like, your career will be at risk, your personal safety will be at risk. And granted, these women are from the Wichita area where Dr. Tiller was gunned down in his church, right, for providing abortion access. And so without hesitating, they're like, we like you more than we like the idea of access to abortion. I was like, well, okay, like that's not the response I thought I would have, where my husband is the one who's supporting me without a doubt, and knowing that it's my passion, and my entire female side of my family saying, don't you dare put yourself out there like that. And so it was a very, very tough position to strike, and I actually ended up not taking the job. The deciding factor was that in Missouri at the time, legislation required that the provider's name and address, I don't know if it's address as well, had to be listed publicly so that I would not necessarily be safe at home, and they could not provide any sort of increased security for my home, essentially. And it's, I've been stopped by patients completely unrelated to some of this stuff. And so I was like, I can't risk it. And it was a really sad moment of reality when I realized that I choose not to be that much of an activist. I chose not to put myself at what I thought was a perceived risk. And that, I think, was one of the hardest things, because that was so demonstrative and so emotional to understand that part of restricting access is instilling fear in those who are willing to provide it. And that was horrifying, to realize that I was participating in that to a certain extent, like because I wasn't stepping up, even though it's part of my belief. So my moments of activism have become very quiet, intentionally so. And so what I do is I support women, trans women, cis women, like women in same-sex couples. I have helped women in same-sex couples get pregnant. Like we'll get the procure sperm, and it's no harder than putting it in an IUD to get it kind of into the uterus. Yeah, and I'm like, I don't have to charge you for this.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, and so it's it's very meaningful to help like a couple conceive in ways that I it's kind of the opposite proportion, I suppose, but it's all the same continuum, right, of providing healthcare to women. So I'm sorry for that long, but just like I wish that I was louder, and I feel that I have chosen not to be at this point. That's what it is.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard to work within the system that we're in. Working at
Yeah.
university, which is also like funded federally. We're facing similar limitations, so I
Mhm.
can like relate to that.
Which is why we all just need to rise up.
And we all do what we can too.
Yeah.
You know, we have to make our personal choices, and that's totally fine.
Totally.
Mhm.
And kind of tagging on to like UMKC, and now in the state of Missouri, you and the lawyers tell us for UMKC that we cannot be real explicit. Yeah, and I mean, I've always given every option to a woman. I mean, that nobody that I know is. I don't like to use the term pro-abortion. I mean, I'm pro-choice. I want everybody to have every option and think about every option. So, and so, you know, I'm just used to giving every option, but I'm almost felt like now that we're not even supposed to, like, even though a woman can go to Planned Parenthood a few miles away over the state line, we're not supposed to give them that information. You can say, call Planned Parenthood's number. It's so hard because, you know, as a woman, I want to help them, and they come in scared. Think about international students. We have so many international students, and they're used to being able to go to their family doctor and get the pill to take it. When I was in Oregon working in Planned Parenthood, they were doing the test on the abortion pill, the RU486, and the physicians that worked at the Planned Parenthood were on staff at Oregon Health Sciences, and they actually had to have like security 24/7. They had state like highway patrol police that escorted them and their families to and from because it was bad.
Well, thank you all for sharing about that.
Yeah.
We do want to thank Dr. Sally Ellis Fletcher. She will be needing to leave soon, but Dr. Sally Ellis Fletcher, before you leave, I do want to ask, what do you think your favorite book by a woman is?
That is easy, hands down, like water for chocolate. It is an old book, old. And it's also a movie. I used to be able to get it off of Netflix. I'm not sure you may be able, well, you used to be able to get it also out of the public library. I don't know if you can get it there now or not. But it is the only book that I literally was sitting on my knees reading, turning pages, couldn't wait to read fast enough. And it's written, I'm not going to pronounce her name clearly, by Laura Esquivel. I'm not pronouncing it. It's set in the Mexican culture during the Mexican Civil War. And it's this multicultural family dynamics, and it's about food and love and intergenerational responsibilities and passion, and just mental health is included, and how mental health is treated in that day. It's written beautifully, and it's a great read if you like that cultural influence. I'm sure there's many, many nuances that I did not understand, and I've read it a couple of times and seen the movie twice, but because I don't know the Mexican culture that well. But boy, is it a fun read to me, and great insights about women and the roles women play, and the roles women play in our family historically, and you can pull it into today. It's my favorite.
I wrote that down. I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And then, yeah, do you guys have a favorite?
No, you go. Yeah, I see you're prepared.
Well, I wrote down, well, my 65-year-old self has to write things down because sometimes I don't remember authors. But okay, so my number one is, I don't know if you've read the book I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. She's the Pakistani activist, the young lady that was shot by the Taliban for going to school. That just talks a lot about that culture and how women and girls are treated so poorly. And I just think it makes me feel better about the US, but it also motivates me, hopefully, to make sure that we keep things the way they are and keep progressing. Then I don't know if you've read Heartland, and this would be interesting for you, a memoir of working hard and being broke in the richest country on earth. That's by Sarah Smarsh, and she's from Kansas. And it's just basically a story of intergenerational poverty. And I work in so many smaller communities between Portland and moving back here to Kansas City. I've worked in Iowa, rural Missouri. There are so many poverty-stricken people in the country as well as in the city. And this country is so divided that it's pitting each of those groups against each other. But this book kind of pulls it all together a little bit and shows how a lot of their struggles are exactly the same. So I just thought that was a very good book.
I read that. It was very good.
Yeah, and I think she's written another book too, but I don't know for sure.
I always get asked what I'm reading, and I do not have the time to read.
That's real loud.
When I was your age, I read We're Spot.
I do read. It's like this. I open a book. I'm like, what an interesting book. And like within one day,
Yeah.
it takes me. I've actually been
What
reading.
would you like to read?
I've been reading this book for 5 years. It's been on my bedside. Like, I'm not joking. So don't ask me.
That's totally fine.
Yeah. It's hard.
To be fair, I don't acquire new books because I know myself. Like, not the time. A lot of
That's
podcasts,
fair.
a lot of news.
Favorite podcasts?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's one that somebody just introduced to me called Totally Normal Gossip. And this is actually very relevant. It's because I was complaining. I was like, all of these podcasters are dudes. Like, where are the lady podcasters? And it's called, I think it's called Totally Normal Gossip. And it's like, I am not. I'm not a gossiper. I'm not. It's just not worth my time. It's too negative. All these things. But what's funny is that they take this story, they anonymize it, and then they digest it, and it's just hilarious because these gals, and it's funny in the way that you think gossip stories are funny without being harmful to somebody by like being part of their circle. And so anyway, it's sort of like a guilty pleasure. So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there are other female lead podcasts, but I was like, oh, this is so perfect. I like short drives. So
Podcasts are amazing.
yes.
Nice.
Well then, looking now and then like looking at your college self, what?
No, you. Yeah.
Is it too loud?
ASMR. Looking at yourself now and your college self, what would you say to your college self?
Who wants to go first?
I can't. I would say don't be so hard on yourself, okay? That don't, this is another kind of cliche, don't sweat this stuff. And I see students every day that are so hard on themselves, and it drives so much anxiety, and it's just hounds them down. So don't be hard on yourself. And I think, I can't remember, somebody said, try to do away with fear. You have to, I guess, is it Brene Brown and her Living Bravely or something? I think I said that wrong. I just, think all those things are great. And I wish that I'd been more mindful about stuff like that when I was in college. Is she still there?
Yeah, I am.
Would you
Okay.
like to go next?
Was that the question that's been asked? What would you tell your younger self?
Yes.
I think it would well, that's a hard question because if I told my younger self then, I wouldn't be the woman that I am now.
Right.
That's true.
And I really, really like who I am now. I really do.
That's a great answer.
You're right, girl.
But I guess if I had to tell that younger girl something, it would be tell all those people who keep trying to tell you to be quiet and silence your voice to just go jump in a lake. Just
Yeah.
follow your voice and just keep going. It'll be okay. Don't worry about them. Just follow and be true to yourself. I wish I had learned that when I was in high school as well as in college. But then I wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
Maybe okay. I'll say two different things. I totally agree with you. I'm like, I think I turned out okay so far. So two things. Number one, counseling is really good. Like, get a great counselor. Everybody should have a counselor. Like, mental health is beyond important. And it's a muscle that you'll have to flex over and over and over for the rest of your life. So get good at being kind to yourself. And then, which is kind of what you said too, just like, yeah, right. Like, learn how to be kind to yourself, and a good counselor can be a valuable tool. The other thing I wish I would have known much younger, since we've been talking about reproductive rights, is like, there are so many options for contraception that I did not know about until I was a bona fide physician. And even then, like, I was like several years in residency when I was like, wait, like, I cannot take the birth control pill every day, like, or like the Nuva ring or something like that. I was like, oh my God, there's so many options. So that would, I think that would be like the actual legitimate piece of advice I would give to any younger woman is like, if you are interested in some sort of hormonal contraception, there are, or even non-hormonal, frankly, there's so many options. So I think I might be preaching to the choir here, but please spread that word, because I feel like a lot of people don't know about it, that there are a lot of options.
That is great advice. Alrighty. When do you have to go, Dr. Sally?
I'm okay till about 3:15.
3:15. Beautiful. Alrighty. Kelly, who is a woman that you look up to?
Well, that's a hard one, and that's hard. Once again, I love Malala for everything she's done and said. So she's just kind of a role model, even though she's younger than me, and it's okay to have role models that are younger than you. I also like there's some politicians out there that kind of go above and beyond. I look up to Laura Kelly in the state of Kansas. She's done a wonderful job at being progressive in the midst of a lot of conservative, and I think she's shown what a true strong woman can do. And then I guess Stacey Abrams, I don't know if you all know her, but she has just done so much for getting like women and minorities out to vote. I think she's very good at that. And I think all that, I did not realize when I was younger how much political activism makes a difference, positive and negative. And I think we've learned some of the negative stuff more recently. But yes, those are some of mine.
Did I say my mom?
Yeah.
My mom's like the nicest person in the entire world, and she's so sweet. She was a third grade teacher, and she retired in the middle of COVID. And I constantly am like astonished that such a nice woman who's so thoughtful had me, because I am like a mess half the time. And so it is truly, especially as I become a mom myself, like to reflect on all those like stupid things that your mom just annoyed the crap out of you. And like the little nuances and the little momisms, and then you discover that you are your mother, and then you start doing all of them. And on one hand, I'm like, oh my god, I'm turning to my mom. But on the other hand, I'm like, but she's a pretty damn cool woman. My parents divorced when I was 10, and so she ended up kind of raising us by herself. And was not a feminist in the radical sense of the word, but just very much kind of like be independent, like just figure out how to be independent, because she had not anticipated being independent, and so that had colored me much more than I realized. She probably doesn't feel that it was executed as well as I believe she did, just because she was there in the moment struggling through being independent. But on the other side, like, she is a strong woman who has her wits about her, who told me to never change my name, and for that I'm incredibly thankful. So, among other things, but my mom is fantastic.
Sally, how about you? Who is a woman that you look up to?
I agree, my mom, but then I have to say both of my grandmothers, even I say my maternal grandmother, biological, because I had a biological and a step grandmother, but I like to take bits and pieces of every woman I meet, and even men, and just look at the character that they give and what they demonstrate and how they behave and navigate in the world. And even some of the negatives I learn from. And so, cliche, all women, but yeah, my mom, she's a gutsy, crazy woman, and she's still living 105 next month. Not that she once was, but every now and then she will still come out with a real clincher. And then if I had to pick the next one, it would be my daughter. She would hit me if I told you how old she is, but she's old enough to be a grown adult. If I'm 69 seasons, you can do the math. So she's got to at least be over a couple of seasons. But she is gutsy. She is kind. She is wiser than I was at her age. And she's just drop dead gorgeous. My gosh, I don't know how she came out of me, but she did. I mean, she's just beautiful. So I would say my mom and my daughter, if I had to pick.
Those are all just like so great answers, You hear those and you're just like, well, okay, we're on to our last question on here, and then afterwards, if you all feel comfortable, we can take questions. I'll start with Allison. How do you envision the future of women's healthcare? And this is both in terms of patient care and the education physicians receive.
Oh, good. You cut me off if I talk too much. So I I assume that it's relatively well known that women are not studied in science very well due to the fact that we're concerned about the fact that they could be pregnant or all of these things. So like for ethical and perhaps legal reasons, historically women have just not been studied. And it's very interesting because in the day-to-day I practice medicine without sort of having that at the forefront of like what I'm thinking, because I'm, giving people medicine and doing all these things and whatnot. Well, at the same time, every once in a while catching myself and realize like women didn't read the textbook when it comes to health. Like our health is so much different than the standard way that we learn and conceptualize health, which is very male dominated. I don't know if that will change. Like I'm not sure that like lawyers are so conservative. And I mean, we've already voiced how they're already, counseling us to not talk about things. And so it's like their whole job is to be conservative, and they're the ones who guide research and pharmaceutical studies and all of these things and blah, 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 blah. Right. And then that's how they're practicing. So like, I'm not very hopeful. Of course, I'm getting old. So again, I don't know if my 20-year-old self will like hearing this. So you guys carry the baton, please. No pressure. But then, what was the second part? So it's like women's healthcare or education of physicians. Yeah. So on the flip side of that, educating physicians is becoming more female dominated. I'm going to make this statistic up, but I believe that over half of med school entrants at this point are not women. And so it is it's an inordinate amount of, it's like switched. And so you obviously have people who have a vested interest in taking care of women in a very meaningful way. And so I have no doubt that just intrinsic to that change, things will change in the way that we provide care, the way that access is opened up, the way that we approach treating men and women and the like. But as far as like science moves at a snail's pace often, and so I don't have a lot of hope that the actual research will change all that, unfortunately. Unless we can have like some sort of a breakthrough where we can do testing on like I don't know, like cell pools that are like definitely not pregnant or something. I don't know. I made that up. Like if someone smarter than me is gonna figure that out.
Okay. So as far as how do you envision the future of women's healthcare? Well, I worry about access. I mean, I think I've said that over and over again, but I feel like in some ways access has been improved with the Affordable Care Act, those types of things. I worry about access for women for birth control, for safe abortions, or maternal health. I feel the best I can do is to empower my patients and to educate them so they know like when something might not be right, or they know where to get the best information, or if I can't provide a service, they know where to go, where they can get that service. And I have taught in nursing. My husband is a family physician, so we used to take med students and residents, and my husband always insisted that they did some time with me as well as time with him, so they knew the difference between nursing and physicians and what they do, NPs and nurse practitioners. And I think that's invaluable. I think making sure that physicians, nurses, all healthcare workers work in a variety of different settings. So you kind of, at least as students, so you see rural areas and the things that they're up against, and you see their access to care. And and then work in inner city places, work in diverse places, work with all types of patients. Unfortunately, I see lots of bills being passed to say that, well, there's one, I think, in the state of Kansas now that says that the state schools should not have to have diversity training for their staff. I was so sad to hear that today. It just made me want to cry because I feel like people need to be exposed to it, and they need to know. I mean, unfortunately, we have to teach some people what right and wrong is when it comes to treating humans all like humans. But anyhow, so I just feel that's really important. And I've always, when I taught community health nursing, sometimes people would look shocked at me because I was the one that got to teach how to take a sexual history. And a couple of these, one student, she was actually a nun, and she was looking at me like, really? And I go, sometimes you just have to put on that face that says, this isn't going to surprise me. I'm not going to drop my jaw open because you're going to get answers that might do that. I said, the more and more you do this, but I think it's so important. I go, even if you never think you're going to work in that situation, I said, but all humans are sexual from 0 to 100 years old. So you have to be comfortable, and people have to be trained to be comfortable. So women, other, anybody coming in to see us, they don't have to be embarrassed or afraid to talk about something. So I think I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. But anyhow, I just think the more training, the more exposure to different groups is great.
Dr. Fletcher, how about you? How do you envision the future of women's healthcare, both in terms of patient care and education for physicians?
I agree with both of what individuals have said completely. And the word envision for me means hope. So I'm going to put on my Pollyanna hat, and because I don't like what I see right now that's going on in a variety of ways. For me, what I'm hopeful, the future of women's healthcare is synonymous with healthcare for all, regardless of who you are, that you're asking, and I think Kelly, you said it beautifully a couple of times, that we're listening to the consumers that come to us. We're listening to the clients. We're listening to the child. We're giving people that space, that freedom, that confidence to share their most intimate, and know that we're not going to get upset, to ask what they may perceive as the most silly question, and go into that provider's office, no matter who they are, and they walk out with information to care for themselves in a better way than when they walked in to either the hospital, the community agency, the private practice, whatever the domain they walk into to receive health care, and what works best for them, whether it's Eastern healthcare, Western healthcare, whatever level, that we are embracing that and not poo-pooing it, but hearing it. We have 2 ears to hear twice as much than 1 mouth. And so that's how I envision it. And in order to get there, healthcare providers, physicians, physician assistants, nurses, nurse practitioners, regardless of what the numbers are, unless the system changes in how the system educates the future healthcare providers, it will perpetuate itself as it is today. So educating people, providers, to listen and to respect the individual as to who they are.
Well, thank you guys. That was all beautifully, wonderfully said. I know those were a lot of questions, so thank you for bearing with us. But if you guys have any questions you want to ask, if they anything, it's not excellent.
Will you pass the mic to?
Did we turn it off? We accidentally turned blue. Is blue good? I don't know.
I think blue good.
I pressed something. Sorry about that.
Will you
It's okay.
tell me how you guys are you in healthcare related field? Like, what's your
Yeah.
interest? You have bodies, so therefore.
Do you want me to hold that? Yeah, okay, you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name's Allison. I'm a graduate assistant here, so student staff member. And I am getting my master's in clinical mental health counseling, so mental health care.
Yes.
And so I am thinking about a lot of your answers in the context of mental health care. And one thing that I what really resonated was your clinic that offers like discounted or free or sliding scale services regardless of socioeconomic status. And that's kind of a huge issue for my profession, to be compensated fairly for the skills and the work that we do, but being able to do so in a way that you can serve the people that need help most, or maybe people that don't have the resources. So like, what did you do to be able to achieve that, but also still support yourself?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
yeah. And I know, Sally, with your PhD in entrepreneurship, you could probably offer like far more insightful things than perhaps I can. But because it was trial by fire. I don't come from a business background. I didn't take any business classes. I actually didn't realize I was running a business until I was like open for 3 months. It was fully open and had actually registered and gotten my EIN and all that. And I was like, oh crap, I have a business. I need to figure out how to make it run. And so once that light bulb went off in my brain, it changed the way I thought about almost everything in life, because everything becomes, and this is a little bit cynical, but dollars and cents, right? Like you got to keep the lights on, you've got to pay your own rent, you have your own paycheck to cover, and then once you get staff, you have that, and then you have taxes, and then you have all of these weird costs you never expect, right? So to the point you're making, like when you want to serve all, you're like, but I also like put on your oxygen mask before putting on somebody else's, right? If you're not getting your oxygen, you will soon be dead, and that person will have no help, right? So that's an important perspective to keep in mind. And so all you have to do is find that price where you can charge enough so that you can serve people, but give yourself the flexibility so that you can. And what we did is we created what was essentially, we called it our philanthropic program. And so we had people essentially apply into it and say, I have this need. This is how it wasn't binary. It was sort of like, how much can you afford to pay and for how many months? And I think we capped it at 3 months at a time. So every 3 months we would reassess and people could say how much they needed. And we tried to be very open with all of our patients that we had a set pool of money that was set aside and budgeted for, and that, we would put out. And there's more need than there is capacity, and that's going to be a fact. And so at the end of the day, you have to figure out what you feel comfortable with and what you can sit with, and realize that as much as we all want to save the world, like ultimately the world is a very large place. And there's lots of people who are also saving the world. You do not have to save the whole world. You have to save your little, what makes sense to you, and care for the people who you can in your own sphere while keeping yourself level and mentally well. And so I think the way I accomplished that best was simply by being my own boss. That may not be the right answer, but it gave me the flexibility to do that. And I also, I didn't pay myself, especially while I was getting started. I did not pay myself a physician's salary. But again, that was my choice. I was the one who got to make that decision, and it was the right one for me and my family. And I have a very, very, very supportive spouse. And so it fit with who I am. So I don't know. It's sort of like all of those things kind of have to work together. Any other thoughts on serving?
I do, but I didn't know Sally wanted to speak because she's going to have to.
No, go ahead. I agree with what you say completely. I think some of the best is just jump in there and do it. And, we in culture as Americans, we think failure is this horrible thing. No, failure is awesome. Surround yourself with people who will say, really? Okay, let's cry about it. Here, let me hug you about it. Now, what did you learn about it? Now, what are you going to do with it? So don't be afraid to succeed, and don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah. So I guess I can tell you a little bit about the failure part. My husband's a family physician, and he owned his practice most of his career, and he struggled.
Yeah,
a
no
lot.
contest.
It isn't, and there's all sorts of rules that, and I didn't know this rule because when I first got out and went to work in a private after I'd worked at Planned Parenthood, because I was used to working at Planned Parenthood, and anybody could go there. And I had worked in college health as an RN too, and anybody can go there. And I'd worked at Children's Mercy, and so I go to this rural health clinic in this town of 500 in Iowa, and it was owned by it was a non-for-profit hospital. And so I'm looking at the fee schedule, and I'm like, $100 for an office visit. Well, I'm going to mark it down to this thing, level 9111.
Yeah.
So the office manager comes to me and says, I'll be baking your cake with that file in it for when you go to jail. So you can file your way out.
It's Medicare fraud.
So I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm being illegal, you know?
Yes,
So then
it's
I, and then they explained, well, there's a way you can do it because we can write off so much care.
Yeah.
So there are ways to do that, even working within institutions. And then my husband owning his own business, I had worked with him in his business some of the time too. And he just said, I'm just going to fire you or whatever. And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, we can give away some of our care, but you just want to give away all of our care. And I mean, in his practice, I mean, he did take, like, we've lived in communities with a lot of Amish people, and they do not pay taxes. So they don't even get, like, won't get any kind of Medicaid or Medicare or anything like that. So they're pretty much pay out of pocket, whatever. You know, so I mean, he accounted for that and came to see him, but yeah, I would give away all the care, you know, and so he just, you know, so so I went to work for federally qualified health clinics, or like I said, I love student health. When I worked in student health before, we kind of have the same thing, but a lot of, you know, where you survive pretty much on student fees, and but a lot of student health clinics now are starting to bill students, but so many of our students, especially at UMKC, don't have insurance. So that would mean if we bill like a $200 office visit, we have to bill the student without insurance the same thing. So, you know, we're trying to keep it affordable, but it's hard. But with mental health, I know that's what you're going into. When I've worked at federally qualified health clinics, a lot of them have pretty extensive mental health providers or clinics within them too, so sometimes that's a good place to start at first, maybe, so you can kind of get an idea of the business end of things without feeling like every patient's having to pay $200 a visit. But then I think being an entrepreneur and filling out finding out or working out how you can do that would be very rewarding to you. Yeah, it sounds like that's what you have to do. But, yeah.
Sounds like any community health center
Yes.
probably has a lot of those like community connections already, or like grants,
That's
opportunities
the nice
to
thing.
have that pool
Yeah.
of funds
That's,
to be
it
able to
is
provide
hard
those
to
services.
do it
Yeah.
on your own. I know for family practices and like that type of a clinic setting, overhead's what, about 60%?
It's
Yeah. Yeah. So you just cut 60% off your income.
Yeah.
You know.
Mhm.
Oh, she- so,
Yeah, it's. I think that's.
yeah, 'cause you're still recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Being your own boss, for better or worse, gives you a lot of flexibility to both succeed and fail. But it also gives you a lot of room to play. And if you're okay with the idea of failure or the concept of failure, or you have enough of a safety structure around you that economic failure, i.e. not making money, is okay for a little bit, it gives you a little bit more room to play. And not everybody, like, I was very privileged because I had a loan repayment, and that's also how I was able to take the risk of starting my own practice. Through the state of Kansas, it was a very cool program, and I certainly wouldn't have taken that risk had I not had that protection. So it's like that was a moment of privilege that I got to. I mean, I could have taken like just a regular job and just got off and started making money right away, but instead did that. So I wasn't making a lot, but also my expenses were really low because my dad had been paid off by the state. So it was like a very like thread the needle of like, well, what can I make work? And of course, my spouse had a job that provided health insurance, which if you ever want to talk about that, like it's
That's a big
a big
Yeah.
expense. It's not impossible now with the ACA. It's not. You can't get insurance. It's very expensive. And again, it's just you look at the numbers. You're like, what can I afford? What can I not? And so it doesn't mean that you need a job to get health insurance. It's more that you need to have enough income to support buying health insurance in the open market, which can be quite costly. So it's sort of like every problem has a solution if you can get creative and think about it. Like there's ways to be creative if you want to make it work. And you have a lot of energy.
It's a young person's game. Yeah. Did you want to ask a question?
What am I doing?
Did you want to ask any questions or just tell them
Oh,
she's
okay.
a nursing student.
Oh,
You're
nursing.
a
Okay.
nursing student?
Well, okay. My name is Brecklin. I'm a student working here. I'm gonna get my Bachelor of Health Science on the pre-med track.
Cool.
I was in nursing. But I feel like my biggest question is like, how did you guys know like, what you want to do? Because I feel like for me, I'm like in this place where I'm like, is this really what I want to do? Like, you know, so it's just like,
That's my same question.
Okay. Well, when I was your age, or like in high school, junior high, maybe, I thought I really want to help people somehow. And like I said, the teacher part, the healthcare, but not quite sure. So, so yeah. And then the more I thought about being in healthcare, I thought, well, healthcare people teach people. It's more one-on-one, or sometimes, I mean, I've been like taught in nursing, or gone to general health classes in high schools and college and taught things. So I thought, well, we can kind of get that part, and then in healthcare somehow. And then, like I said, all it took was kind of an ad that said, we really need nurses now. Of course, by the time I graduated a year and a half later, the economy had gone down, and a lot of older nurses that had either kind of semi-retired or gone part-time started working full-time. So then it was harder to get a job. But the neat thing about at least nursing that I've liked is I've been able to find different jobs at different times, no matter where I live too. And I knew that, and it's pretty much the same with being a physician too. And I mean, because I have a daughter now that just moved to Arizona, and she's an athletic trainer, and she's done sales and stuff. And sometimes it's kind of hard to find jobs, but if she was a nurse, like I told her, but then I'm the mom that says you do what makes you feel happy. She probably can find a job. Yeah. So, but yeah, you got to do kind of what your heart tells you. I do believe in that, but also like my dad kind of said, try to get a career where you can support yourself too. I don't know if that helped you.
Yeah.
It also helped. Before I went back, or right when I was kind of getting the few prerequisites I had to get to do the nursing, I worked in like at St. Luke's. Is kind of back in the day they used to call us orderlies, but we'd transport patients, we'd run lab places, and I kind of got to look at all the different units, radiology and lab in the hospital, and just listen what the patients said about them, and just saw how the staff interacted. And that really helped me. And kind of after that, I thought, yeah, I think nursing's good. And my uncle was in med school he'd probably just gotten out of med school, and he had been in GP, and he went back to do a residency then. And I kind of saw what he was going through at the time. And I felt like, I've already got a lot of school. Do I really want to try that path? Maybe not. I thought about dental school too. I had friends in that. So just kind of asking people and exploring around, maybe shadowing too, or doing some volunteer work someplace. I think that all helped. And then when I worked at Children's Mercy as a nursing student, it really affirmed, or confirmed what I thought, yeah, this is. And once I got into clinical nursing, I felt it fit me like a glove. It really did. So.
I do feel like nursing is one of those things. I come from a big family of nurses. My mom, my grandma, all my aunts are basically nurses. I feel like you learn a lot through what you don't want to do also. So like, trying on the various positions, nursing, there's so many different realms that you could be in. If you like, talking to people, if you feel passionately about healthcare, if you don't mind blood and poop and all of those things, you can make it work, and you can find the right position that really feels right. And it's okay to try on a bunch of different things. But if you like the basic, like everyday things that go into nursing, like talking to people, doing their IVs, I don't know, you can speak to a lot more of the like daily things, but I think any profession that you're looking at, you have to think, what's my day-to-day going to look like? And is that okay with me? does that drive me to get up in the morning?
Those are good things to say. And
Yeah.
there's enough like shows that are fairly realistic.
It is exactly like Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's right. There is that.
You know what's cool about well, that's right. I
Oh,
hope. Oh, yeah. What's cool about nursing too is that you can change your
that's
field.
what I like.
Yeah, you can
about
change your
it.
field.
Yeah.
Like I can't go into surgery. Like I can figure out make it, but that's not allowed. But a nurse could be like a primary care, like in a primary care setting, and go into a surgical office. So you can change. Like even within that, you could be like, oh,
That's cool.
it's so cool.
Yeah.
It's a very transferable skill set.
Work in hospital and a clinic. Yeah.
And so all the family has allowed me, family
Yeah, you-
physician, yes, has allowed me to be super flexible with like what my day to day can be and where I can go.
I tell my husband, family doctors would make great nurses.
Actually, true.
Tell him that.
Why are you spending so much time go see your patients and parents? You're like, that's not your job. Do be more efficient.
Yeah.
But how did I do? So I think this is such a good question because I feel like I was in your shoes at the point that you're at, where I'm like, actually, my mom was a single mom. She very much instilled like become economically independent, like be an independent person was really what I learned from her. And so I think that colored probably why I wanted to become a physician. It was like you know, a lawyer, an architect, or a doctor. You know, it's like one of those things. Like be somebody who's professional. Like go out and be something impressive. So it was probably a little bit more of that than I probably admitted at the time that I was being pushed into that. Because by second month of med school, when I was already had like signed over, like I will take out this much money to go into med school. My second month, I was like, I don't know if I actually like medicine. I was like very in debt. Yeah, I was like, yeah, so it was 2 months, and I was like very in debt. I was like, well, the end of the tunnel was like that way, and out like a decade that way. And I was like, I guess I'm just gonna do this. But not to say that it's the wrong choice for me, but rather I had picked it, I think, out of reasons that maybe were not as like didn't make you happy type of things. More like I think in retrospect, again, lots of therapy, but it was more of like do what impresses people. Like was probably where I was coming from more so than I wanted to admit at the time. That being said, I'm also like a very type A. Like I like to jump through hoops to play at circuses. Like so, I like did my homework, I did my things, and I like to get patted on the head and be told I'm doing a good job. So in the end, it's fine, and I'm on this side of the last decade with my training, and I can't imagine being in a different career. But at a certain point, I was like, I don't think this was the right fit for me. And even from that standpoint, as I've described, like I've found my way into like, well, maybe sitting at a bench doing scientific research is totally uninspiring to me. Like at my undergrad was in biochemistry, and if I had stopped there, I think I would be just bored to tears all of the time. But you keep finding it, and in residency, we had to have a mentor. We had to find a mentor, which I thought was kind of a funny assignment because I don't know how you like manufacture a mentor, but apparently you can. So I found this woman who was doing the job that I wanted to, and I asked her, we could have a lunch meeting, and asked her how she did her job, and she gave the same BS answer I'm about to give you, which was like, I don't know, I just kept doing things that I like to do, and here I am. And so, as stupid as it sounds, like it is true that if you not every job is going to be fun and passionate and like lovely every day. But if you kind of keep guiding your ship, like, touch the rudder a little this way and like maybe a little bit back, like you will find yourself into a spot because there's a human nature. That's where you'll end up. So it's not important that you know where you're going to end up so long as you sort of don't lose the steering on your boat. Just gotta keep going. You'll find the right.
Yeah, I completely agree. I probably went the opposite way of you guys. I had the parents that were like, do the financially stable thing, do the like, you're going to be solid foundation. No, I got my degree in women gender studies, and it was. And I don't know why I knew that from such a young age in high school. I was like, no, I'm going to find a college that has that. I'm going to do that. And they're like, what are you going to do with that? I was like, I have no idea, but that's just what I need to do. So then I was a birth and postpartum doula for about 8 years, did the whole owning my own business thing. And COVID was the great equalizer, right? Where I realized how burnt out I was. But I had flexibility to be home with my young kids during that or before that time. And then I found here, and I'm still in my realm somehow. So my boat's chugging along, just like you said. Yeah.
Find your passion.
Yeah. You'll find something if you follow your heart. As cheesy as that sounds.
I want to, do you want to derail this a little bit?
Yeah.
And just totally drop something that I think about a lot because I think you guys are probably smarter than me, maybe on this.
Sure.
Because it's related to job, career path, young children, owning your own business, like all of this. So I didn't understand feminism perhaps until like my early 30s, like I was saying, and that's because I had been raised with boys and girls are equal, like very different era than sort of like, oh, be quiet, sit back, behave. It was like, no, it's all the same. Like you guys can all end up doing the same thing. So that was internalized. I believed it. I lived it. There was nothing holding me back about my gender all through med school, college, even residency. And in residency, so residency is the training, the 3 years or so in family medicine after you go to med school. And during residency, again, my male and female colleagues were evenly split in our program, were treated exactly the same. And I mean this literally, like exactly the same. Women would get pregnant and would have no leave because they were treated exactly the same. It was exactly the same, which I know equality, equity, and all this stuff. But like, on one hand, how horrifying. On the other hand, like these women went through and graduated with everybody else, and they were not held back. And there was like the time did not elapse. And our programs would work with these women in the sense that we would build a schedule around like that sort of 4 to 6 weeks when they were expected to deliver, and say we're going to put you on an elective, and we're going to call this elective raising the newborn. And like, and so you can still get paid, and you can still get credit, and it's within the realm of family medicine. And so that was sort of the way that we made it work. But at the same time, they were working it. They were expected to like participate to a certain extent because it goes back to Medicare funding of residency programs. If you're not working, you don't get paid. So if you aren't participating, you're not paid. So anyway, I share that as context because in my mind it's like, oh, we're all equal. We're all equal. Wow, look at you. You're pretty cool. You didn't have babies and working. Didn't cross my mind how ridiculous this was. Then I opened my business, got pregnant. It was only 4 of us working at the time. I got pregnant, my nurse got pregnant, my partner got pregnant, and there's only one other person. We all got pregnant the same year. Like, and our babies were all spaced out by 6 weeks. And it was like, that was the first time that I realized that men and women were not equal. And I know that sounds like stupid, but I was like, how am I going to run a business and have a baby? And it goes back to running a business. Like, if I wasn't there, no income was being generated. So if I left for a leave, we would have no income, or at least I wouldn't have income. My partner theoretically would. And so we had kind of designed it so that I would support him during his leave. He would support and take care of my patients during my leave. And it was going to kind of work out. And a month before his baby was due, he told me he wasn't coming back. And I was like, no, right? And I promise I have a question at the end of this weekend. I could have enforced a clause in his contract where he had to work for 90 days to finish out his contract, but I'm not an ogre. Like, his baby was due in 30 days. I wasn't going to make him work through what was otherwise going to be parental leave. And so at the 30-day mark, I wished him well. I was still pregnant. My nurse was still there. I was like, what am I going to do? And so I ended up, again, because like nobody was going to pay me unless I paid myself, I ended up doubling up and taking shifts in ERs and hospitals that needed extra coverage. So I was working on the weekends in ERs, the weekdays during my clinic, so that I could pay myself while I was pregnant. And I also firmly believe in putting my money where my mouth is. Literally, well, not literally, but like actually. And I wanted to pay for my nurse's salary while she's gone. And we're a small business, so there's no one else to pay it besides if I generate the revenue to pay for her income while she's gone. And so I was like, if I truly believe in supporting women in this period, I now have to support her also during this time period. So then I was like, all right, well, so there's a time period of 32 days where I worked every single day for 32 days to support my practice, myself, and my nurse, and bringing on a new partner to take over my old partner. All of this, fast forward to 3 weeks postpartum, I'm holding my baby, and everyone had quit. Everyone had given me their notice, including the person I'd hired to cover my maternity leave. And I had worked my tail off creating the income to support everything. And 3 weeks into it, everybody ended up leaving. And they gave me notice. It wasn't like none of them walked out, but like that was the point where I was like, forget this. I was like, and I believe in women's equality that we can all achieve the same, but I was like, ultimately, if I'm having babies with my uterus, tangent, I did ask my husband to get a uterine transplant and carry our children. He declined, so I had to carry them. But that's not really technically possible yet, but I'm sure it's afford, right?
Let's work on that.
Yeah, right. For sure. Anyway, but the whole point, like that's what it really was a gut punch. It's like I did feel very equal in all of my professional steps, and I'm very proud of where I ended up. And then I got pregnant, and it all came crashing down very like in the moment. And so I like the question I had to you, and this is when I started to get very interested in feminism. It's like, how is it supposed to do? Like, right? Like what do you do? And how do you, other than working 32 days in a row, like we don't have an answer to that.
No, I just think our society in general needs to support family life in general and a way for private business, small businesses to be able to have that, because otherwise, but I don't know. That's a pie in the sky Pollyanna, hoping that at some point in the future. And when my husband and I both were working full time, and granted, I mean, he did inpatient, he did deliveries and stuff like that. But I mean, it wouldn't be unusual for him to sometimes take one of our kids to do hospital rounds on his back. And I mean, when I worked in hospitals, I had a lot of male physicians bringing their kids in and drop them at the nurses' station, which wasn't always the best thing for us nurses because, once again, most of us were female, and he just felt we could watch his kids. But yeah, at least I made Arthur put our kids in a backpack or a front pack when he took him. But because the patients love it, But
That your child, all this type of violations.
yeah, well, now I can do that. Back in the 80s, you could.
Yeah.
So anyhow, but I think it's just working for that equality in general in our society. But yeah, it's
I
hard.
don't think it's like it's something that you conceptualize. And again, we're talking about having children and whatnot. But like if you get a paid maternity leave, it's because your employer has figured out some way to come up with the funds to fund that maternity leave.
It's hard for small.
It's hard for small businesses, but it also creates this strange. This is also what I wrestle with. So again, tell me what to think, because I don't know what to think about this. When you are hiring, obviously we hire in a non-discriminatory way, but then an employer will look at a young woman and say, what's the risk of you leaving and getting pregnant, costing me money, being away? Look at a young man and don't have that same thought. Now, legally, they can't act on it, but like, this is the subconscious is the problem. It's that like, this is a very real thing. Yeah. And so then my next thought is, well, maybe both partners should be equally likely to leave. And so maybe we should have parental leave on both. For both men and women, right? Truly, have it be an equal probability. Well, then I got male colleagues who have parental leave. We're calling it vacation. Just
And
like,
they go out and play golf. Yeah.
I don't know, just like, so please solve these problems, guys. You can
I hope you're
this out.
I can work on this.
I think it does come back to like, voting, the political is the personal, and supporting family leave, supporting families in general, better childcare. Childcare is completely inaccessible. Making workplaces more friendly for mothers, for children. It's not always possible, depending on your workplace, but overall we can do a lot better. And there are a lot of women in politics working on that. I think we have other countries that are great examples that get both parents get their leaves. Also, I could go on and on about postpartum care in general. But yeah, I think that comes down to a political issue that needs to get changed.
Yeah.
For cis males.
Speaking of that, speaking of your doula experience, it's kind of interesting. They have a men's doula boot camp. I just saw that. Did you see that? African
Daddy
American men.
Daddy do what?
Yeah, but this is a guy in Kansas
Yeah,
City
yeah.
that's doing it
Yeah.
to empower because of the
Mhm.
African American maternal
Yeah.
mortality rate and stuff. And I just stood that they can really advocate for their partners, and,
Mhm.
which I thought was just totally awesome. You know,
Yeah. You would have hated our Women's History Month because we were researching all of these women, very famous men. We know the men's names. Very obvious, yeah, on our board out there. And so many of the women's stories were they graduated together, they did all this research together, or they were equally producing work and theories and whatever they were working on, all different industries. She gets pregnant, her career's over. His name is the one we know. And so many, yeah. Oh, Lessons in Chemistry is so good. Love that show. It's a TV show now. It's great on Apple TV, I think. Highly recommend.
I feel like it really shows the importance.
Yeah.
I feel like it really shows the importance of equity and involving equality, because we can all be equal in a sense that we get the same things, but without that equitable change, we won't be able to achieve it in a way that's meaningful. And you guys have truly showed that. And even over here, like we've talked about, that change isn't really seen or talked about. Equity is seen as like it's an unfair advantage when really you're getting that step up to a fair start.
Right.
Right.
So really important. Thank you guys for everything.
Thank you for having me.
You said you have lots of questions. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you like go door to door and get signatures. Like how do you go about starting that process to be a person that does that?
There's a website. So yeah. Yes. Missourians for Constitutional Freedom. And there's 3 more weeks to collect signatures. And so far I think they're doing pretty good. They're on track. So, but go to that website and see, because they probably want to still train you, I would think. And if not, there's going to be, if it does make it to the ballot, there'll be more opportunities like phone banking, things like that. And they do wonderful training sessions, and they give you what you need to do it. And yeah. So
I can connect you.
yes. Have you? Yes. Yeah. And a lot of them are very young, like you guys. And it's just so fun. They have a lot of energy. And then there's a lot of the signature collectors are like women my age or even older. And then there's a few men, like my husband, who's been a physician and really wants to see this to be safe, you know, and to be able women to have. So it's fun. And yeah, they do, like they plan a pizza party for us. Yes, it's kind of fun, and you do get to talk. But there are a lot of younger college age people that are getting signatures too. Yeah.
Definitely something I want to learn about.
Yeah.
My part.
Yes.
Okay. Another question is, you mentioned like the advice that you gave to younger people and just like contraceptives and just not being as aware of them. Are there other like really important healthcare things that women should know about if they really don't, so that they can implement? Yeah.
Oh my god. Maybe the advice should just be like, find a trusted clinician who you can have that conversation. It's nuanced and different for every person. But like so much of like even sorry I was alluding to it. We used to do pap smears annually, and there's a lot of there's some expectations that like that should be happening annually, and at a younger age, it's like absolutely not. Like it needs to be spaced out. It's actually harmful if you do it more frequently. So there's some like things like that, just like empowering with changing evidence. I think it's a good like call out to say like that's a really specific place where women's healthcare was prioritized and made safer. for women.
Yes. Pap
Yes.
testing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
The development of the
Vaccine.
pap test
Yes.
itself, which I saw a good history on PBS about the development, and you hear about Dr. Pepin, but nobody knows that his wife did cervical scrapings on herself daily, so he could watch, so they could look at it under the microscope to see the changes throughout the cycle. if you can look this documentary up, I don't know what the name of it was. And then she talked a lot of her friends into like her taking samples from them so they could study house tests. So
Very
it was very much a woman's. Oh, you're okay. You're fine.
But like yet another example of like essentially women taking things into their own hands to do the thing that
Needed to be
Yeah,
done,
exactly.
and that they got little credit for because the test. Well, I guess that was her last name too, but he's
Yeah.
the one that, yeah. So, but, and I mean, I agree. I think having a clinician that you feel is giving you correct evidence-based health screening recommendations and things like that is important. It's always been a passion to me to go to like general health classes or go to high schools or like Girl Scouts as much as I could just to explain things about, when is a good age to do this, and we talk a little bit about contraception. And I remember the first time I did, there was a high teen pregnancy rate in the small town in Iowa I worked at. About maybe each high school class was about 20 people, and like 4 girls per class would be pregnant by the time they graduated. And so I remember they paraded these girls into the locker room for me to do the talk. And I mean, some of them looked like they hadn't gone through puberty yet, but they were in like 6th and 7th grade. It was the middle school. And I said, you want me to do the whole talk that I would do to like an 18-year-old? Yes, please do. And the longer I was in that community, I knew why they wanted to do it. And then when I worked at student health at Truman State, one of the girls that was in that class came to me for a first pap smear. She goes, I remember you. She goes, and I go, yeah, and she was a twin. And I go, you were one of the ones I thought was about 9 years old, but I guess you were older. So, but yeah, so things kind of come around sometimes, but I just try to empower women to know what's right. I had another, this woman was like a caseworker for this young lady, and it was when the new guidelines came out, and the young lady was sexually active, but she was a teen, and she goes, she needs a pap smear to be put on birth control pills. And I go, she doesn't need a pap smear, but we can put her on birth control pills. Right. And she's like, no, she needs a pap smear. And then the more I got to talking, I pulled the caseworker out, and the more I got to talking to her, I kind of got the impression that she felt like if you're sexually active, this is your punishment. You need to come out of pap smear. Like, no, it's not that way.
Oh
No. So people are up against a lot, So,
I also think that like an interesting book I did read a book. It's called Everybody Lies, and it's about a guy. This is like
it's like I've read it.
A PhD student did his research on Google Trends in like the late aughts, early 2000s, like before like we all know how much they know about us. And what he found was that one of the top health searches was women searching, why does my vagina smell? Or my vagina smells, or something like that. And his whole book, the whole premise of his book is that everybody lies, but they don't lie to Google. Because that's like the place where you go when you like to look for things, right?
You might not want to ask somebody.
Yes. And I was like, oh my God, like big hug to all women. Like, I can't believe everybody thinks their vagina smells. And it's like, so that would be like on that list of like, here's the contraceptions, like there's contraceptives, like here's normal pap smear. Like
this is what your discharge. I mean, we get that question a lot, and they go, I know I have a yeast infection, or I think I have BV, and I'm like, no, it's normal to have. We'll talk about normal discharge and stuff. But yeah, you need to feel comfortable with a provider that'll be able to have a little time to sit down and talk to you and listen about your fears and stuff, what you're concerned about.
Maybe you guys are more progressive than I was, but I remember like that was all news to me when I was in residency. I was like, what is this like discharge cycle? Like, let me learn more. So yeah, it was just lots of stuff, just normalization, so that women don't have to Google why does my vagina smell.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Or you can just buy a candle by what's her name.
Oh yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, no.
It's supposed to smell like her vagina, supposedly. No.
Maybe it's normalizing the smell.
Goop is Gwyneth Paltrow's like wellness brand. Yeah.
Maybe she's trying to make it more of a
She probably talk about businesswoman.
Yeah.
Probably makes a lot of money.
Probably, yeah. Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
market is due.
Yeah, maybe. You know they're part of it.
Yeah. Whatever you need. Just
Yeah.
don't put the lit candle anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, there's that small fraction of people that are like, oh yeah, I love that smell. I want that in my bathroom. Yeah. Oregon? Hmm. Yeah.
But I just
We should get one for the center and see what it's like. Social experiment. Yeah. Mhm. Right.
Thank you guys for sharing your personal experiences with that.
Mhm.
You're really speaking to like the lack of education that like, women get growing up. Like we're just kind of told to be a pad
Yeah.
and end of conversation.
At least you're told that.
Yeah.
I heard an interesting story. Like my grandma said that her sister, she remembers her sister running down the steps thinking she cut herself on the foot.
Oh,
Back
really?
in the day, nobody ever said, you know, and then they're just like, "Oh, you're Sarah. You're gonna do this every month," but that's about it. Yeah, yeah. So it has come a long way, but not enough.
Right, yeah.
Anymore.
What about like resources in the community? Like what are like your like top 3 resources that like you would send someone to if they needed like healthcare for like a low cost? And that's accessible. Would it take
you're-
months to actually
Yeah,
get
no,
into?
if you're on campus, I mean, our clinic is open
Yeah.
except for the week between Christmas and New Year's
Mm.
and the 4 days around Thanksgiving, but we're just open like any family practice clinic and we're well staffed. We have 2 providers every day, usually nurse practitioners. We have a collaborating physician, Dr. Deb Ahern, but she says most of the stuff you guys see here are things you guys can see, you know, and so but anyhow, we function, and we have a lot of students that come see us during COVID. I was there on all my days that I worked, and a lot of students couldn't get in for care anywhere else, and so they came for their wellness care, they came for their sick care, we do everything. We do preventative care, we do STI screening, we do pap tests, low women exams, and most of it, no co-pays. You don't have to pay for the visit. If we do labs, there's a small fee for the labs, and students can bill it to their student account, which is nice, or they can pay on credit. Then if it's something above and beyond us, we do refer out, and you know that there's good counseling resources on campus too, so you probably know that. The counseling center, the CCAS, which is open to the general public too for counseling. I don't think a lot of people know that, and it's low cost. And then I refer, like when people graduate and they don't have insurance, I tend to refer them to like KC Care Clinic or Sam Rogers. Yes, those all are federally qualified health systems, and they'll help people get insurance through the Affordable Care Act, or if you can't afford that, they have a sliding scale. And when I worked at a QHC, usually the lowest thing on the sliding scale was about $25 a visit. So it's affordable. They try to keep it pretty affordable. So those are some of the ones that I utilize.
The other one I had is Jan.
Oh yeah, that's a
We have gender affirming care here.
Casey Care.
Casey Care does.
It's my go-to.
Okay.
And then University of Kansas, sometimes they don't have the best, and University Health too. And then we do see some students, I mean, we will give prescribed injections for students if they're hormone therapy, those types of things. But since testosterone is controlled, we have to, somebody else has to write the script, but we can do that. And we've done a lot of that too. And, years ago, when I worked in Oregon at a college health before I was even a nurse practitioner, this was real eye-opening for me and all of this because it was a fairly small town. It was a college town. We had a student there that was a trans woman, and she had gone to Colorado because in the day, Lyman, Colorado was the only place in the United States where you could get transitional surgery. The doctor there had studied in Europe. And we had this patient, Carrie. She had been a male logger. She was really tall, about 6'3". She went through her transition. We supported her through that. We gave her a place to come in. We just let her have an exam room because she had to dilate her vagina. And then this old family doc, wonderful man, he said, "Yeah, I'll do the exam and stuff." And I can still remember him sitting there going, "Boy, if I hadn't known this, I would have never known that, Carrie, you've been a man before because everything looks completely normal, And we're all, and Carrie was wonderful about sharing that. But I just felt like having that experience was great way back then. It was, 1988 or something. So that kind of really helped open my eyes, and just knowing the reasons why she did that and how hard it was. She had to carry a gun because it was a very rural community, and she knew a lot of, loggers and stuff. Yeah. Anyhow, but yeah.
Thank you guys again for sharing. We're going to kind of head into conclusions for the day. Again, we want to thank everybody who attended this event, and we want to thank you guys, Dr. Allison Edwards, Dr. Sally Ellis Fletcher, who's left, and nurse practitioner Kelly Freeland. We really thank you guys for coming and sharing your wisdom with the students here at UMKC. And like Kelly had mentioned, if you are in need of health services now or in the future, the Student Health and Wellness Center is on campus. It offers services to students, and it's located on Brookside 51 building, like right on Oak Street. The Women's Center is also a great place for you to get more information. We have a ton of different pamphlets on a ton of different programs here at UMKC. We're open 9 to 4 Monday through Thursday, and we close on 3 on Fridays. We also have a fun little book club. We will read it for you, so don't feel pressured to read it.
There you go.
When you don't have time. Yeah.
It's called Financial Feminists, and it's going to have a little conversation when you come here. We'll have a little discussion about it. It'll be April 22nd, 11 to 1 here in Town Hall. So, thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I might want to read that. And then I was like, let's be real.